Are we in heaven? It's episode 27. Welcome back to the Rena 100 Show, the show where I, Rena 100, talk about a theme every week, most of the time, unless I feel like doing something else, which is always possible, but doesn't happen a lot. So, the theme this week is parties. Partying, going to the party. I thought parties are interesting because it's a group of people together in a room or in an outdoor area or in some area. Which happens a lot in human society. Humans get together. But then we give different labels to the gathering, and that's what sets the tone. So, a party is only a party because we call it a party. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of people milling around. But labeling it a party is what makes it fun, hopefully, or daunting and terrifying. Going into a party, walking in, I think that's always the scariest part, isn't it? When you show up and it's like, well, at least I feel this way. And this probably has a lot to do with my issues. And someday I'll discuss that again in therapy. But I always feel like getting to the party, I always have to like justify why I'm there and who I know and what I'm doing there and why I exist and why I'm alive. And that's scary. And also, what did I bring? So it's like, it's a moment of me having to prove my worth to the group so I can be accepted. Which is also kind of a vain take because it's like, who's really paying attention to me? You know, most of the party are thinking about themselves or each other, not me. But that's why I'm always scared to walk in to parties. If I'm in a group of friends or with someone else, I always want them to walk in first so I can kind of just trail behind and not be as noticed because then I won't be as evaluated and I won't feel as much like I have to prove my worth. So it's interesting. It actually kind of reminds me of, I bring up TikTok every episode, don't I? I just think it's really innovative and I'm kind of obsessed with it. But it makes me think of TikTok on your For You page. Like, it's like the first couple of seconds of the video, they have to prove why you should keep listening, you know? So it's kind of like you coming to the party, you show up, you have like a little bit of time to make an impression and then like to prove why anybody should be interacting with you. And then often in parties, groups assemble. Little groups of people that have found each other to chat with, and you don't want to be the odd one out, you know? And that's scary too, because it's like, I mean, that's just like a big human nature thing of trying to be part of the group. Because I'm assuming it must be thousands of years where not being part of the group was a really dangerous thing to do because we need each other to survive, and definitely used to need each other to survive. And we still do need each other to survive. I definitely need other people to survive. I mean, I think about that a lot, how I have no survival skills and I don't know why I'm allowed to continue to be alive and that I'm just this like weak, dependent person. I mean, really, the more privilege you have in society, the more you're just a weak, dependent person because the more privilege you have, the more you're not actually providing for yourself. You're paying other people to do all the things that provide for you. And you're just sitting around and benefiting off of it like some weird parasite. And I often feel this way because I don't farm any of my own food. I don't build any of my own furniture, etc., etc. I don't make any of my own clothing. What do I really do? I make a podcast? I don't know. Oh, Lord. This went deep down the rabbit hole, didn't it? Pretty fast. Who knew that a party could do that to me? Well, I did because I get anxious going to parties. Yeah, so I mean, in this group, once again, it's often about like, who invited you? How are we connected? Why should I care about you? And yeah, a lot of the time going to a party, I think to myself, wow, this is supposed to be fun. And I think a lot of people are having fun. And sometimes I forget. Sometimes I'll bump into a friend and catch up, and it's actually quite fun. And suddenly I'm riding the wave and just gallivanting around, and I feel free and stress free and just part of the flow of the party. Um, but then other times I feel like, oh, everyone else is talking to each other. I'm all alone. I don't belong here. And I don't like any of you, and you don't like me either. And that is stressful and isolating. Um, Also, parties a lot of the time involve actions of, they're actions of social lubrication that can cause self harm. For example, alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, and other drugs. And a lot of people even think of doing drugs and drinking. The verb for that is partying. You're partying. You're partying and you're having fun, but it's also self harm. Um, but it does bond people together. It at least gives the illusion of bonding. I don't know if it actually does. So that can be another way that you can feel isolated at a party. For example, if a large group of people decide to go to the bathroom together to do cocaine and you don't want to do cocaine, or you weren't invited to do cocaine and you're the odd man out, and suddenly they come back and they're all really high and it's awkward. Yeah, not engaging in these activities of self harm, or engaging in these activities of self harm to the extent where you end up embarrassing yourself and regretting everything. Um, these are ways that parties can be kind of dangerous places, especially when we're younger and have less discerning ability in terms of our choices. And isn't it interesting how at a party in a room full of people, you can feel so alone? Um, I think often when it comes to people, it almost feels like the more people are around, the more isolating it becomes. Or does it? Unless you become part of that like group think, group mind thing where you're all chanting together if you're there for a purpose. But then in a giant city, you can feel so alone. Maybe, you know what? If you feel alone, you're going to feel alone no matter where you are. Maybe I can't blame it on the amount of people. Now, sometimes parties have a specific thing that you're celebrating, and that can also impact the tone, of course. If it's a cultural thing, or like a bar mitzvah party, or it's a wedding, or like today when it was Canada Day, people celebrating Canada Day. Obviously, it doesn't happen a lot in this country. But then you can have mixed feelings about Canada Day, but you're at a party for it. And that can be very isolating. Like, if you're at a bar mitzvah party and you know, I don't know, you know that his father isn't his real father, but nobody else does. So it's a weird party for you. That's such a bad example. I don't know. My mind just like lives in soap operas sometimes. No, or you're at a Canada Day party and you're native and you don't think Canada's something to celebrate because Canada is a force that has always harmed you and your people. But you see people mindlessly celebrating. What are you going to do? Let the air out of the balloon? I mean, maybe you should. Maybe you should. I don't know. In that sense, partying can be socially irresponsible. I mean, people can bond over all kinds of things and celebrate, and they can be very macabre and very sadistic together as a group. If you're on the wrong side of history and you're celebrating the downfall of a more vulnerable group of people, you could have a big party about that if you really think it was the right thing. And wow, people celebrating together. I mean, and that's the odd thing about human nature, isn't it? That you think that, like, things that are bad would always feel bad, but they don't. Bad things feel good to some people, or to a lot of people, when they don't know any better, and then they celebrate them. And that is crazy. But I think, generally, as long as you're not celebrating pain, and you're not causing anybody any pain, an excuse to celebrate, it's a nice thing. Hey, why did I just spend 10 minutes talking about how parties are horrible? It's a nice thing, people getting together to celebrate generally. And if for no other reason than just we're still alive and we're lucky to be here. All right. Have a good week.